Hey, hello everyone, I'm Larry Hamilton. Welcome to my YouTube painting channel. Thank you for watching again. We're going to do a watercolor painting today, and you've probably been seeing the image up on the screen here for the last 10 or 15 minutes. So this scene, a couple of you have said you really like the scene, this landscape scene, and it's actually from a competition. I'm a member of a Facebook page called Watercolor Workshop, and I think every month they've been trying to put like a little competition out there for everybody. So this was the photograph that they provided for all of us to try to paint, and then we will upload our painting to this Facebook page, and somebody's going to judge it. I don't know who or how, but anyway, if it's good enough, it may make the winner of the month for this particular web challenge. So anyway, I don't know where this photograph is from. It looks like it's from somewhere out west, but it's a fall scene. I'm going to make it more fall than it actually shows in the photograph. I'm going to put more yellows in it, more ochres and that sort of thing. So let me go show you what I did to the photograph, and then I'll come back and we'll get started. Hold on. Here I am at my computer, and I want to show you the original photograph that we all started with, and this is the original photo. It's a nice little water scene, has some mountains in the background. It's not really as much of an autumn scene as I would like to have, so I'm going to probably put more oranges and yellows in it than actually show here in this photograph. And I actually cropped it down a little bit to give me less sky and a little bit less water, and so the cropped version is here. So you see I've taken some off of the front and top and bottom, and I've also made it fit my typical 11 by 14 paper, and it also fits the TV screen pretty well. And hello Genevieve from France, welcome. So I'm just showing the photo of what we're going to paint from. I also have a grid version, and this is what a 5 by 4 grid looks like over this painting, or over this photograph I should say. And so I use that to sort of do my layout, and then I also do my value map. Somebody asked me if I was going to do a tonal map. Heather asked me that, and I corrected her and said, yes, I'm going to do a value map. So it looks a little bit like a puzzle, and that's what a good value map should look like. But it's not very descriptive. There's not a lot of objects in it, basically a few trees, and so we're going to have to make our interest with the color. And as I always do, I make a sketch. This sketch will be on my website along with the value map when I get this edited and put back up after the broadcast, probably 2 or 3 days. And so I don't know how quickly this is going to go. I did a rough draft of it the other day when I was painting for some people in public, and I did it in about an hour and 15 minutes. So if it takes me about that long, I may try to do one other painting in a very loose and impressionistic way. I have a waterfall here that I really like from Oregon, and so if I have time today, if you guys want to hang around, I'll do a second painting, and I know where this is from. I took this photo, so we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I wanted to alert you to that. And with that said, I think that's all I want to show you here, so I'm going to go back over to the easel and go through my paints and brushes, and we will get started. Okay, here I am back, and I'll want to show you my my palette, and well, yeah, you've seen my palette. I had it up here, and so let's just go through it very quickly. And once again, I'm using Sterling Edwards palette and brushes, and I have a medium and a small. These are bristle brushes that I sometimes use them, sometimes I don't. They're good for blending edges, and I may use that in the second painting more than I use it in the first painting. I have a couple of nylon brushes here, a 1 inch and a 1/2 inch flat. I have 3 rounds, a 12, an 8, and a 4. and I have a number 6 rigger. So that's my complement of brushes that I'll be using. I may not use all of those, but it doesn't make any difference, just so you know what I have. Let me go around the paints very quickly here. We have, I'm losing my voice, folks, sorry. We have neutral tint here. Have cyan blue, ultramarine violet, crimson lake, primary red magenta, cadmium red, burnt sienna, raw sienna, and yellow ochre. A couple of greens. I have a cupric green and a sap green. A couple of yellows here. I have a limon yellow and I have a primary yellow. A couple of browns. I have burnt umber and still to grain brown, and I have an orange here that's a reddish orange, I guess you want to call it, almost a blood orange. It's called Avignon orange. I also have a couple other paints in here. I have lamp black and titanium white. I rarely use those, but I might use it for something. Probably not today, but anyway, that is the paints, that is the brushes. Let me do my camera work here and get my painting zoomed in so you can all see it nicely, and have to be a cameraman here for a second, and I think that's pretty good. Let me move it over. I'm going to move it over here so that when I put my palette on, you see most of the surface of the paper, and I do that when I edit these because I have 3 cameras in here videotaping my work, and so I'm able to edit these videos and combine them in ways that make it most usable for you. So with that said, anybody else? I want to check my things. Heather says think of Alaska. Yes, it does look a little bit like Alaska. Katie, hello from Poland. Welcome. So let's get going. I'm going to start out, instead of wetting a bunch of my paper today. I find that kind of causes me troubles when I paint vertically, which I'm sure you've watched me experience that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of clear water in here with a round brush. I'm using my number 8 round for the sky, and that's really all I'm starting with. I'm going to get some ultra blue here and really just put in a little bit of that in some areas, and let the rest sort of be clouds. Put some up here like this, and you can see it's kind of running. I have to get some paper towel while I'm standing here. And we'll just sort of let these sort of run and mingle a little bit. I'm going to pick up just a touch of neutral tint, and it has more of a gray color. I'm going to put a little bit of that in here. This, I didn't have it very wet, so it's getting hard edge. You can see that. This is a good test to see how wet your paper is. You can see the edge here. See, it's the paper's dry, so the paint sort of stops and it collects on the bumps of the paper, and that tells me that paper's dry, and it makes a pretty decent looking little cloud there, even with a little shadow over it. Let me put a couple of things out here. If I need more water, I'll just pick up some clear water and sort of blend it together a little bit, and use the paint that's there and just sort of connect this together. I've got a big tree that's coming up here, and so I want to save room for that. Maybe put a few more dark shadows here on this side, in here. They're not really showing up as dark as I would like. So a little more paint, a little less water. And over here, let me put a few things over here. I'm going to try to make some of this a little darker above the mountains. I'm going to have a row of mountains back here that actually wasn't abundantly clear in the photograph. So I'm going to put them there to add some depth. So I have a few interesting things here that sort of connect together, and I actually have more blue sky here than was in the photograph, but that's okay. I've added some more gray clouds as well. So that'll have to do for that. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my ultraviolet now. I'm going to mix it with this blue that I have on my palette. Again, using this round brush, number 8 round, and I'm going to come in here and start putting in some of these distant mountains here. And why am I using this color instead of the photograph? It's really a dark blackish green actually, but the photograph doesn't give me atmospheric perspective, which I like. And if you're going to paint in any medium, you have to understand how to fool the eye, and you have to be able to make atmospheric perspective. And usually that means the colors, as they go back in the distance, they get bluer and more violet in the distance. This is going to be behind a tree, so I'm going to just leave that in there. Put a little bit over here maybe. And so, but I want to make sure that it's distinct from what's there so that it doesn't confuse you with the sky. I want you to be sure that you recognize this as being something other than sky. So I'm mixing a little blue, a little bit of my ultra violet and mixing it together there. That's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to just add some water, just soften it up and lighten it up. You can actually pick that paint up if you have a brush with a nice little point on it like this. Pick it up if it's too dark, then just let it sort of blend and mingle over here on this side. Okay, and I have some change of color in there. It's not all the same color, not all the same value. So let's just sort of leave it like that. Put in a few marks to give some shadows in these mountains back there. And by adding that just those little blue marks here, it gives you a little bit of idea that there could be something on those mountains besides trees. Blend it out so we don't have a lot of hard edges in there. I don't want a lot of hard edges because it's not very close to us. That's why this hard edge bothers me just a little bit right here. The harder the edge, the closer it looks to you. So as they come forward, we'll make those things darker and the edges harder. All right, let's move forward in our landscape and let's see what we can put in this. We've got a lot of green in here, and I'm not going to put all that green in it. I'm going to put in some green, and I'm going to mix it with blues. I'm going to mix it with ochres. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my voice today, folks. I don't know what's going on with my throat here. I can't, got a bug in my throat. Let's see here. That's really way too light. It needs to be darker. My value map, this was a very dark area in here, if you remember the value map. I only showed it to you for a few seconds, but it was very, very dark in this area. And that's, I'll pick up some of my neutral tints and put it in here. Let's see if I can blend this together. This is really a bunch of trees and some ground. I've got some, mix it up with some ochre and just wet. It's not, you can't call this really wet on wet because I've pretty much, the brush is pretty much dry. The paper's dry. Well, the brush isn't dry when you got paint on it, of course, but the paper's very dry. When I take this brush and do that, you see a mark. Leave that mark. That means that brush is the paper's dry, and I've got enough water in the brush to just sort of skip across the surface of the paper, and it leaves those interesting marks. I'm going to put a few more things back here. Make sure I cover up the white paper as much as possible. In here, this is going to be a big tree back in there, so I'm going to have some indentations where you can actually see the mountain behind the tree. I'm going to come back, pick up some more ochre because I want this to be lighter, looking more fall-like. I haven't put any orange in here yet, but I'm going to start doing that shortly as we start coming forward. And okay, here, let's see. I think I want that to be ochre up here on this top to make sure I give a distinct difference between these areas. So I'm not really following the color palette of the photograph hardly at all, folks. I'm just sort of letting it sort of do what it wants. I'm letting the paper sort of, the painting sort of tell me what it needs to give myself some depth. So I'm trying to make a series of overlapping terrain back here by using these colors and intermixing them and mingling them together. And let's see, what have I got here? Make sure I keep that. Okay. So I'm actually making this a little lighter than it could be. Put a few. I'm just using a jagged thing here. I'm just like I'm nervous. I'm really like kind of moving my hand. There's no specific brush stroke. It's just letting me make these sort of jagged, jerky movements that help you think this is trees back there in the distance. It's the idea, anyway. It's getting too light there. Darken it up more. If you take neutral tint and ochre, yellow ochre, you start getting sort of an olive color. May have told you that before, but bears repeating. I know some of you may be watching me for the first time, and if you are, I thank you and welcome you. If you're a repeat, I really appreciate you being here and tuning in and watching, following me. So I'm getting a lot more land masses back here than we actually have in the photograph, but it gives you depth. Every time I put a line behind a line or put some terrain in front of what's there, it gives more depth in the painting. So every layer we can put on is another layer of depth. This is going to be behind a tree back here. This is all land down here as well. It's all really land there. So it's just a big, a big mountain sitting back there. A big bunch of mountains, actually. Okay, any questions? If you have any questions, type them in the chat window, and I will be trying to keep an eye on it while I'm keeping an eye on my painting. And let's see, I wanted this to be darker in here. I had a darker, my value map said make a little bit of a darker area in here. So I'm going to just sort of make a section in here that's a little bit darker, and it's more like a stand of trees and stuff out in there. And above it, I'm going to come back and lighten it up with a little bit of some other colors. Maybe even pick up a little bit of my burnt sienna here in this area. And letting this sort of run together since it's already wet. I'm getting some blossoms running down there. I don't know if you can actually see that. When I put the water down on top of it, it made sort of a blossom. Okay. Could have painted that first and then put the darker below it, but I'm going to come back now with a little more dark underneath it. Sort of put in some trees with my combination of my blue and neutral tint. As we're coming forward, you're starting to see more of the actual trees themselves. So they're getting a little darker and they're getting just a little more distinct. These are just simple pushing up strokes with the brush. No complicated, fancy brush strokes required here. So that looks like a little stand of darker trees out here. Anything that's vertical is usually darker. Over here, I want to extend them up this way a little bit. Make it look similar to the photograph. It's one of the things when you're painting a photo for competition, when everybody's painting the same thing, you have to try to at least have it look a little bit like the photograph, unless you're doing sort of an abstract thing where you don't care that it looks like the photograph. But I had a lot of sky in here, not a lot, but I had quite a bit, and I didn't want to leave it just all white and gray as the photograph did. Heather asked, do you make a jerking brushstroke more pronounced as you approach the foreground? Yes, you will, and you'll make the, the heights of the trees and so forth a little larger. The landscape here is actually, there's not many trees on it. It's all very flat, and it's just scrub grass or grazing grass. I don't know if this is an area where some cows might graze. It looks pretty steep. It doesn't look like it's something that would be used for grazing cattle, I wouldn't think. But I do want to get things a little more pronounced as they come forward here. Make another layer, making another area that's sort of middle value. And right now it's all kind of green in the photograph. But I'm going to start changing it up a little bit. I want to get some orange, and I'm going to start picking up a little bit of my cad red over here. When I mix that with the ochre, I'll start getting more of an orange color. If I mix it with green, I'll get a gray color. But I just want to start changing the color a little bit. I got way too much green going on here right now. So I'm just going to fill this in. Put a little bit behind the trees back there. Let it blend together with what's in front of it. This is a couple big trees over here, so I'm leaving room for that right now. That's why you see a sort of a very jagged edge over there, or slightly jagged edge, I guess I want to say. Change it up a little more. And then I've got, over here, I've got another set of trees that kind of come in. I've got this already coming down here. I'll work like that. Here, let's put in some more. Pick up a little yellow, see if this yellow will help lighten it up a little bit. The primary yellow will give me a little more yellow in the grasses here. Not much right now. Still have a lot of ochre in it. Hello from Croatia. Welcome. Another international audience here today. I think my timing on these classes is better for people in Europe than it is for people in the U.S. simply because the timing of it is such that it's evening over there and it's the middle of the day here in at least the East Coast. And so I think that's nice that they can tune in and watch, and appreciate everybody who's here. Okay, let's put in a little more yellow here. I'm going to have some darks behind this and some yellows behind it as well in these trees down here. So I'm just kind of painting a series of landscape lines across to and if you notice the angle changes, so it's different. It looks like different elevations and different parts of this mountain are running, and they all sort of run this way or that way, and they all run down to this creek that's down here, or river. Maybe it's a river, I don't know. But that's what you're trying to show when you make these angled lines in here, contour lines, I guess it'd be called. That's what the sketch provides. Just gives me guidance on those things. Got a few whites in here. Let me put in a few, get some more of that red out here. When you mix red with green, we get gray, and depending on how much red we mix with green will determine what color and value of gray we get. That's a little bit too bright red, but let's put some of this in here and there. So it's kind of matching, getting another complementary, or getting a echo of this color over here that's above these trees. So because I'm putting this over sort of a greenish color, I'm getting more of a gray sticking out there. That's not in the paint, not in the photograph at all. All right, keep moving here. Doing pretty well. Only been going 30 minutes or so. Here I'm going to have some. I want to put just a little bit of this background color in here where this tree is, so I have something to show behind it when I put the yellow back over it. I got some areas in here that I want to highlight. I'm just going to put in some very loose of this grayish, greenish color I have here. And as they come down, I'm going to have more of it because it's going to get darker, and the trees are going to be darker down here. So I'm just going to pop this all in while I got the brush and got everything going here. Got some rocks and going out to the bank here. All right, I'm going to let that dry very good before I come back to it. Make this a little bit soft edge in some areas so that it's not all hard. Do the same up here. Mix up hard edge and soft edge so you don't have everything hard edge. To make sure I know where I'm going here. This is a dark row of trees in here that come down to the bank, and the grass is down here right on the bank of the water. So I've kind of got that filled in. The rest of this is going to be some mixture of darker trees, yellow trees and green trees back here. And so I'm going to leave that. See if I get some more soft edge over here maybe. You can always get soft edge from a hard edge. And you do that if you got a brush that's got some strength in the bristles. You can always massage that edge and soften it up. Okay. Use some more paper towel out here. All right. This is all, it's kind of drying nicely since I'm painting wet on dry. It dries fairly quickly and I don't have a lot of time to wait. It's a little bit of a, I don't know, I guess it's a road or something going back here. I don't really have to put that in, but I'm going to put part of it in and just sort of give myself a break from all of this yellow and green and that sort of stuff. It's probably a road of some kind back there. Just going to leave it in. I'll paint over some of that, and at least I'll be close to honoring the original photograph, since I'm doing this for a little competition. Might look like it's part of a bank back there of a part of the terrain. Then it comes down here. All right, got a lot of dark. All right, what do I want to do next? I'll let that dry. I'd like to let it dry without having to get my hairdryer out and blow it, because I know that's loud and drives people crazy, so I try to stay away from it as much as possible. Maybe I can come over there. I know this is all very nicely dry over here. Let me see, I've got some orange going, or this red color here. I mix this cad red with some of my primary yellow. I end up getting a nice orange for the trees. And again, I've got other reds I can use, but I think that cadmium red and that primary yellow will give me a nice yellow, a nice orange. Okay, up here, let's start up here. Let's go up. This has got a little bit of orange in it, but I'm going to use my ochre and just a little bit of my red in there and see if I can change it slightly to a lighter, more of a, I don't know what you call that color. It's a light orange, I guess. But I'm going to try to get dry brush. So far, folks, I've only used this brush. One number 8 round. No, I'm sorry, this is number 12. This is a 12 round. I think I told you 8 earlier on. You get paint in the brush. When I want these branches up here on the top to be very, very light and airy. And the way you do that is to take a brush and get some of the water out of the furrow down here, and then just sort of lay it on its side. I'm almost laying it totally down on its side. And when I do that, I start getting these very light and airy looking tree branches, tree leaves that are connected to the trees. And that takes a little practice to do that, but and you don't want to have too much water in your brush when you do it, because you'll end up with everything turning to one big blob, and you don't want a blob. I'm making these very light, and I'm just sort of scrubbing across the paper. And very neat technique, and you can leave these nice little branches that hang over. And I'm going to put some greens in there, come back and put some green in, darker green behind it. As this comes down here, this area, I start getting, actually I hit another tree or two. There's several trees in here that have a lot of bright orange in them. So I'm just going to pop those jobs in there right now. Leave a few holes for greens. So you want to put the lighter colors in first, and then come back with the darker colors around it after that dries. So I'm going to float in some more of this. I'm mixing up between my primary yellow over here and my cadmium red over here. I'm using different mixtures and different colors, and put them in like this. Leave a little space. So what you see me painting is the orange parts of this tree. And now I can come back when this starts to dry. I can come back and put another layer on it, and I get another value. So you've heard me talk about having more than one value in your painting. A light, medium, and dark. That's what the value map is all about. So you can, and actually I don't draw the value map like I paint this. I just make a general sort of a mid value here. But when I want to get in with the brush, I want to make it have some different textures. I want to even take this big area that was like a puzzle piece and break it down into smaller puzzle pieces. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just putting in the light colors because I'll put the dark colors back over them and fill in where I have all of these bright yellow, orange leaves that are turning colors on us in this time of the year. If I get too much water, it just sort of all gloms together. It makes one complete piece of paint there. So I lost the airiness, but sometimes that's good. You don't want to have it all look the same. You want to have variation and change it up. Apologize for my voice today, folks. I don't know what's happening to my voice. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to mix up some green colors now and mix a little bit of this ochre in it. So yeah, I'm getting a combined sap green for my sort of a mid value. Mix it with ochre to get a lighter value, and then mix it with my ultra blue to get a darker value. So I end up with three values here. So if I have three values, I can show three-dimensionality, right? Right. So let's come back and see if we can put in some greens in here without disturbing that. It may be dry enough. Using pretty much the same technique here, filling in some of these holes with some of the green, and I'll put that one color in. I'll come back and put a darker color over it, and we'll start getting more of the third value in there. And I'm trying to pretend the light's coming from which side? The right side? I think I wanted it to come from the right side, but I may have that mixed up a little bit right now. And sometimes these trees, the branches layer over each other anyway, so it's not quite as obvious inside a tree where the light's coming from. These are going to have more ochre over here. And it runs down this way, and there's some more ochre over here. Greenish ochre. So I'm letting some of these run together. I've got a big dark tree that goes up in here, so I'm going to leave that open for now. And go back and fill in here with some other colors. So there's a lot of painting to go on with these trees just because I'm trying to make them look fairly realistic. Okay, ultra blue, neutral tint. Sap green. Put these nice dark shapes out over the lighter color behind it, and you end up having some telling the viewer that that's overlapping, that this is in front of what's behind it. Just bring it down, getting a little bit of running going on there. Time for some ochre. I don't want to stand on the same color too long. I want to mix it up, change it up, make it look like there's more than one or two trees in here. So I made that all combined. There's no air holes in it at all. Come back with some dark, put it in. Leave nice little abstract shapes here in the middle if you can, around these oranges. Put a few up here, bring it down. So this is there's a big pine tree in here. Got some more orange. I'm going to leave some room for some orange over there. It's getting darker as it comes down to the ground here. And as this dries off, it's going to get lighter. Watercolors, one of the problems people have with watercolors, which you may have heard me say before, is that they're not the color on the palette is not the color on the paper. It is when you start, but by the time you let a little bit of it dry, it turns out to be a lot lighter, maybe 20-30% lighter. Henry Glaus says, I live in mountains in southern Missouri, and the color of fall is here, and your colors or trees are right on. Well, that's good to hear. I've been to that, in some of those areas before in Missouri, and I've seen it. I lived in the Midwest for a lot of years, and so I've seen those colors. So that's kind of must be coming out of my memory here inadvertently, because they certainly aren't in. They are in this painting a little, or in the photograph a little bit, but not dramatically. So I'm appreciate the comment. I just want to mix them up and throw the oranges in, throw the reds in, and keep the greens going. Okay, I'm actually make sure that what my friends see on the broadcast here live is not getting overlaid with my palette. Okay, this is going to be all dark, and then we're getting down into rock here, so I want to make sure I preserve that. This is a one brush painting so far, folks. One brush, number 12 round. I get stuck like that sometimes and just like it and don't want to change it. So if things are working good, if I'm not having trouble with getting the shapes I want or getting the types of feel I want in a painting, I'll just stick with the, see, this comes down and starts coming up over the water. It's actually comes all the way down to here where it hits the water. Okay, so I can put in some more of these, put in a few things here, darker. I don't know what this is. This is too wet. It's too dry. You can usually scrape out something. I'll come back and put in some tree trunks in there after a while in these trees so that they don't look like just big orange and green blobs. I want to have some branches going on in there and so forth. So you see, I might need a little more up here, just a few darker areas to give me some mixture of values. All right, just going to leave that like that. I think this big tree here comes down. This tree down here comes down into the water, over the water actually. So while I got these paints going, this color going, I'm going to just sort of pop that in there. Add some greens, change the color, change it from dark brown or dark bluish. There we go, something like that. That's the kind of feel you want to get out of these trees. Got some more, a few more sticking up over here. Just want a few little things in here. More yellow and more ochre in here. I see this burnt sienna coming out back here. Pick up a little bit of that. A lot of rocks on top of the ground here. I'm going to leave room for these rocks. I want to put in some dirt here. And this all sort of flows down to the water. So I've got nice little looking things here. I don't know if I got some room to scrape out there. I scraped out a little bit of a tree trunk. Maybe there's room for another one here. Okay, something like that. See, if you scrape it out just right, you'll make the white paper will come through. In terms of, by just right, I mean the time from when you put the paint on the paper. If it's too dry, like it was up here when I tried it, nothing happens. If it's too soon, when you scrape, it will actually turn black or dark. It actually goes back to dark if you get it too soon. If you get it too late, nothing happens. If you get it just right, you get a nice little tree trunk or branch or something there that looks like it belongs. That's starting to get too dry in there. Not getting anything. Sometimes the plastic end on these brushes is awfully soft, so I can bring up a razor blade sometimes and see if I can pull something out with it. No, it's still too wet, so they're too dry. So I'll just let it go for now. If I want to put it in there, I can always wet it and wait for 30 seconds and then come in and scrape it out. All right, now I've got dark trees going across over here. I'm going to throw a little browns in there to change the color a little bit. My brown being dark sienna, along with my neutral tint and my sap green. So I'm getting a greenish, brownish, dark color in here. And it doesn't look a whole lot darker than what I had on the other side over there, does it? Well, these trees are, I think my pointed brush is letting me down here. I'm going to have to go back and get my flat. Oh, this may work. Try this. I'm leaving some room in there for some yellow colors. I want to put a little some yellow trees in behind this to sort of give me another. I got dark here, dark here. I'm going to leave a little band of yellow in there and see if I can get another layer, if you will. Starting to get down into the rocky areas here, which I don't want. Since this is nice and dry over here, when I go back over it, should give me some nice little tops of trees over here. Sometimes this is where this little 1/2-inch flat brush is a better deal. Changing brushes, folks. Warning. In here you can kind of come in and put in vertical touches like this, and you end up getting things that look more like pine trees than I was getting with this round brush. I hope you can see that. It's a little hard to see maybe, but by laying it down, I get the little pointed tops on there that I'm looking for with this flat brush. And I can let that dry a little bit and come back and hit it again, and it will get darker. Let me see, I haven't used my violet yet. My violet and green give me a nice sap green, and violet give me a different color of brown, or different color of green. See, this is a little bit dry over here. You see what happens? I can leave it look like there's a little bit of a fogginess back there. And so I'm painting around the bottom of this. I'm leaving some room for grasses and that sort of thing, and some rocks down here. So I'm trying to think about this edge here while I'm painting all of this up above. If you think about this edge, I'll leave room for rocks and grasses. If I don't think about this edge, I'll just paint something flat and square down there, and it won't look right to you. And Daisy Snow, hello. Why is watercolor so difficult? Well, that's a common question, and I'm really happy you folks are trying out watercolors. It's a water-based medium just like acrylics, but acrylics is opaque, and watercolors, well, there are transparent acrylic paints, but for the most part, the acrylics you buy are opaque, which means they paint over one another. When one dries, you paint over the other one, and it's just a little bit like oil painting. You don't have the mess to clean up with solvents and stuff with oils that you have with acrylics. You don't have that with acrylics, but you have the same technique. Basically, you can paint over what you have, and it will stay. And the color that you paint with acrylics, when you put a color down with acrylics, that's the color. It doesn't change. When it dries, it stays that color. With watercolors, you have to plan for 20 to 30% lightening of the color when it dries. If you notice this area here, when I put a color in there, the color has dried and now it looks lighter. And since it's lighter, I can come back now with it being just a little dry and put another layer on top of it, a little darker. So, as is the case with oils, and I do paint oils, so if you've watched me paint oils, you've seen me do things like this, but oils I typically paint dark first and then come back with light. With watercolors, you really need to paint light first and gradually get darker. The trouble most people have with watercolors is that they don't make their paintings dark enough, or they don't put enough dark shapes in there. And every workshop I've ever been to, the instructor usually has come to me and said, make it darker and it'll be fine. So I have to concentrate on making my things darker. You see what I'm doing here? This is a technique you can do with watercolors. It's very hard to do with oils. Oils or acrylics, you would paint that and then you come back with a white brush and go over it with a white trunk. Here I'm negative painting. And when I put this nice dark around that trunk, all of a sudden you see the branches for that tree. I didn't paint the branches, I painted around the branches. So it's a very neat technique. I really like doing that. Sometimes I get carried away with it, and I have to pull myself back in. But when I do that, you see some very nice effects. Before I forget, this area back here, while it's kind of drying off, I'm going to see if I can cut in a trunk or two. You see how that got it just right? I get talking and I forget what I'm doing, but so if I can take some of that water out of there just a little bit, I'm making very light trunks to show up back there. I can also scrape up, but that damages the paper a little more than I want to. So I'm putting a lot of detail here, and that's because everything's getting closer to us, and I want you to see the detail. So I can do the same thing over here. I'll do another one for you just to show you what I'm doing here. Putting in a dark edge between two light areas, and I've made myself a couple more trees. So negative painting or whatever is very, very much, it's very fun in watercolors, but you have to think about it. Think ahead of time. Oils, acrylics, if I don't get that white tree trunk in there, no big deal. I just get my brushes out and I come back and put it in, because the oil paint will dry, or you can paint right over oil paint, or the acrylics will dry and you can paint right over acrylics when it dries. So anyway, that's the idea with the difference between watercolors and acrylics. Acrylics are generally easier, and some artists say you should just start out doing acrylics before you do anything else, because at least you can work on things like composition and certain objects and get them to look like you want them to before you start trying to deal with watercolors, which, you know, the water in the brush, the water in the paper, the water in the paint are all affect the quality that you get with watercolor. So I'm just putting in a few more of these areas back here that have some color in them. I don't know if it's land, I don't know if it's little trees. It actually could be little trees, but I'm going to just fill it in with a lighter color to give me another layer back here. So I'm building a lot of depth from the water to the bank to the trees to this land to that land, all the way back to the mountains, to the sky, to the clouds. As I build that back, you see a lot of interesting shapes and so forth. So let me see, I'm going to put in some now. Down here I've got some more grasses and that sort of thing that sort of float around in here. And they're around and over some rocks. There's some rocks below them, so I want to leave room for rocks below these in some of these areas. So just putting in a little bank here that has some grasses in it, using my flat brush and pushing up into the tree line and painting over the tops of rocks, what will be rocks. All right, so much for that. So I'm getting a lot of this done here. I'm going to come back before I forget my big tree on the right side over here. I want to pop him in, get me a little water, get me some colors, greens and so forth. Over here, this guy, while I got this flat brush, I'm going to put in a top on him and sort of put him in like this. Leave some room between the branches. Let him overlap some of the stuff that's here. Change the color, change the value. Little trunk in the middle here, come down. So this is all very dark. Almost no color getting through it. I'm going to throw in a little bit of ochre in here to kind of lighten it up, change the color a little bit. I'm using a nervous hand again here. Heather, I think Heather is the one that asked me the question. Sort of jerky and that sort of thing. It just makes such more realistic looking branches, and especially when you're painting pine trees of any kind, or you need that type of jerkiness, I guess is the best term I can think to call it. And then down here, I'm going to see if I can paint in and let some of the other trees show up here by doing negative painting. You see that? I just painted around some of these yellows, and I'm going to do some around these oranges down here to let those look like they've got some branches sticking out into behind my tree, or this tree I'm working on right now. More ochre. Let's put in some ochre. And so just, it doesn't have to be perfect in there, but I want to make everybody think this is truly a big pine tree back here. Mixing colors, putting blues in, putting my greens in. I haven't cleaned my palette out either today. I've only used 2 brushes. I've used this flat, 1/2 inch flat, and I've used my number 12 round for this whole painting. Okay, so we'll get that all filled in over there, bring it down, and while it's there, let's see if our little trick works with the knife. I don't want to do too much of this because it gets to be sort of predictable and it looks very contrived, I think, but I want, that's at least got one good trunk in there, and I can put some more in with one of my script liners if I want to after a while. So putting in a few more darks. See Daisy? Look at the darks. What's happening here? All this area here was just sort of mid-value. Once I touch that with this dark paint, you see what happens? They just pop out. And it lights it up. This is all kind of junk over here. I'm going to put in a few more darks. This area over here is drying off, Daisy. Like I said, it was getting lighter by 20–30%. So I let it dry a little bit. I come back with a darker value using the side of my brush and just touch in some more branches, some more like this here and there. I'm putting in sort of shadows behind some of these branches that are up there. And that's all you have to do, something like that. Not too much. All right, I think that's pretty good. I got rocks I want to put in over here. I got the water. I got some more trees and bushes over here. So let's go work on these trees over here. Well, I got these colors in my palette. Ochres, yellow, a little bit of red to tone it down a little bit. See if I'm getting that color. I am. I'll leave some room here for a little bit of dark. I have to separate this area over here. This area here is the background here and the trees. I have to separate. If I put this color directly over it, I'll end up with confusing you, and you won't know where the trees start and where the background starts. So I'm going to put in some separating color in here, some green, sort of change it a little bit. I've got some green in my brush, got it on my palette, so I can come in and put in a few of these. Pick up some orange maybe and see if I can put all this in. There's some more green trees down here I'm going to put below this, so I'll just sort of pop this in very quickly here. This green, I want it to come in here. I want it to separate this tree and put a few more things out there that look like there's a tree setting back behind this tree. I'm even going to make it go up above it a little bit. I can just sort of tell you more what that is. I'm going to have one over here the same way, facing a little bit different angle, but it's going to tell you what's going on back here. There's some other trees behind these trees, and they're sort of sticking up, and that's good enough. Maybe I can see a few of the green things coming through here. That's good enough. Put a few more darks in here. Maybe there's a little green going on here. These start changing colors over here, so let's put in a few. Using this stuff that's in my palette, I'm not mixing up any other colors. I've only used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, 6 colors counting ochre. Let's see, this over here is all. I'm doing a lot of the same stuff over and over. Need some soft edge down here. Let's put a little soft edge in and pull this together. This is going to be the bottom of this set of trees, and they're going to run into some rocks down here. Okay. Come back, get some more of this see, these were darker down here, and then they were lighter up there. Okay, let's put in a few things here. I'm letting this get soft on me, and it's changing color. It's sort of getting these are bigger trees actually over here, so I'm going to, instead of trying to make them so, put a little roundedness on the top of them. And those are going to lighten up, so I'll come back and I can put some more dark in there. In this area up here, I'm going to keep going back and get some more of this color that I had here for these trees. When that dries off, I can actually put some of that back on top. So you're getting a real lesson in painting trees today, I would say, and making a beautiful fall landscape, hopefully. So, yeah, I don't want anybody to give up on painting watercolor. It's so much fun. It's a lot of, it's easy. It's easy to, I shouldn't say it's easy to paint it. It's easy to clean up after. You don't have to worry with solvents and all that stuff. You don't have to worry about putting out gobs of paint. I keep this palette here. It's these paints, I forgot to tell you, were My Mary Blue watercolors, which I've told you before, but I forgot to tell you today. They semi-dry. They never really get hard. They don't get hard like Winsor Newton paints. They always get a hard, crackling surface, and it takes a lot to get them reconstituted into a paintable consistency. These things have a stickiness to them. If I touch them, they feel like something sticky, like a candy or something. So there's another brand, I think, that uses honey as one of the binders in there, and they have the same kind of sticky consistency when they're, quote, dry. But if you take them outdoors and paint, in the summertime you'll get eaten up by bees and bugs and all kind of stuff that like the honey. So I use My Mary Blue because I don't like to get eaten up by bugs when I'm painting outdoors. And I love the consistency. I love the way they reconstitute, and they're so transparent. It's just beautiful. I just like to work with them. Okay, we got a few little things down here. It's going to be more rocks down here. Okay, this is all darker greens in here, and I'll probably overlap it into that area. See if I got any ability to put in a, no, get talking and forget. Okay, let's move on here. Let's see if we can put in a few rocks. I'm going to use, I think I'm going to pull up some of this raw sienna. It's kind of between my dark sienna and my yellow ochre. Sometimes it makes a good sandy beach. It's almost the same color as what I have on there, but I'm going to put some shadows under that, and we'll get it to look more like rocks, hopefully here. I'm using this flat brush again. Notice how I gave up the round brush, and all of a sudden I can't get off of the flat brush. It's a trait of mine that I have trouble breaking. I think it's because I'm lazy, maybe. I just like to go back and forth when I'm thinking about the paints. I don't want to have to think about brushes and changing brushes and all of that. I like to paint fast as I can. So these are rocks along here, and I'm just putting in the rocky color of some of these. I want to make them come out into the water just a little bit in some places. And I'm leaving enough of that lighter color in there to give myself some highlights. Make this a rock. What do you think? Yeah. Okay. And there might be a few little rocks over this way. I'm going to save room for the water back here. So I can come back and get darker colors and put some darker values under these to give it a more of a three-dimensional look. But okay, and down here there are just tons of little ones, tons of little rocks that you can just make almost with little circles or little half circles. Change the color. That. Come back and put some gray over it. This case I'm sort of painting the dark bottoms first, leaving a little bit of a mid-tone value for there, and then the paper is the white is the highlight. And here I've got some dark bottoms. We're going to come in here and start putting in some more trees. Just pull it up. My brush splits apart a little bit, and so I just put in these things that look like these are not necessarily pine trees. They're more they're called deciduous trees. Yeah, M. Graham, you're right, Heather. They use honey. The paints are pretty good, from what I can tell. They're not bad paints, but to use them, particularly outdoors, it's a little bit problematic, particularly if you don't like to get eaten up by bugs or flies or bees. All right, this is trying to get it finished off a little bit here. Okay, so I've got a nice change of color, change of value here going on. Another little tree. I actually make it a little darker here to give me some separation. So you can just see the way I'm carving these trees out with dark values, light value, right? And all of a sudden I made a bunch of trees right there that was just a glob of paint. So a lot of this, Daisy, for your help is really just how do you fool the eye? How do you make an optical illusion out of something? Because you're trying to paint something three-dimensional. And this is true for all painting, not just watercolors, but you're trying to make something three-dimensional on a flat surface that's two-dimensional. And so by using different values and using these tricks of the brush, I want to say, you can really fool the eye, and people will think you've got a nice three-dimensional look there. All right, other side over here, I'm going to see if I can put in a few rocks over here. I'm going to add some purple to this. I think that helps me get a better color of a rock. Put the purple on the bottom and put sort of a gray on top. So I'll just paint in these areas with rocks. Leave a little highlight there, something on the top. Give me some dark. How are we doing on time? I got an hour 16. Okay, it's fairly close to what I did the other day. I volunteer at a cancer clinic here in my town, and once a month I go over there and paint for the patients and people in the waiting room. So I always am looking for some nice painting that I can pull up and paint for them. And so since I had this little competition thing going on, I thought, well, maybe I'll just try to paint that over there. And that's what I did a little practice with it, and kind of liked the way it came out. And I said, well, I should show you guys this, and that's why we're doing it today. Put in some dirty colors here, ground. Like that. Water's going to come back in here, and okay, fill in a few of these whites here. Okay, and over here I got some more I can put in, maybe put in just a few things that help fill this in. Another little glaze of this color over here. See what that does? It just sort of gives me as long as I don't spend too much time over there, I just sort of take some of the whites out and leave some of the highlights and so forth in there. All right. All right. I haven't painted the water, but there's the water. What color is the water? You've heard me ask that question before. Water has no color. Fast strokes like this. Water picks up what's around it, what's in it, what's above it. So it's a rushing stream of some sort. At least I'm making it a rushing stream. Have some soft edges in here. Don't leave it all hard edge. Change it up a little bit. That gives some reflectivity. Some shadows. I gotta have some shadows coming off of the bank here. Come back, mix it up, make a little more soft edges in some areas. A few soft edges back here, maybe. All right. Can you tell me, folks, does that look like water? Fill in a few of these little white areas. Sometimes these white areas get bothersome, so I just sort of glaze them over with either a blue or a violet color to sort of take some of them out. And this is actually the a nice dark shadow running all the way across this water, and it's from these trees on both sides of the bank. So I'm just going to leave that very loose in there and see how that is. A few more things here. Let's put in a few tree trunks and so forth. I'm going to get my rigger out now, sort of do some calligraphic markings, I guess you might call these. Throw a few things in here to make it look like there's some tree trunks that are out here. I get some of this darker color, black, blue. Up in here I've got some a branch, this one that has the white on. I'm going to extend it and pull him out like this, like that. I'm going to put a few branches on him here if I can. You see where I'm putting the branches? Why am I putting the branches over the light yellow? Because they stand out, right? Since that's dry, I can let you see them. If it was, well, whether it's dry or not, if I don't make them darker than what's behind it, you won't see it. So that's the trick there. So I've got it coming down here, and then it goes white. The trunk goes white. So anyway, that's all I want to do there. Let me see over here. I've got a whole bunch of branches. I get some more water in here. This has got to be runnier. See if this works here. In here we've got trunks running down into this area, coming up here, hit and miss. Don't make them all. Don't just draw a big brown line down through there. Make them start and stop. Up here we've got a so these rigger brushes are really great for this kind of stuff. But again, you need somewhat of a nervous hand to do that. Jiggle. Okay, let's see. I get my brush with a good point. There's some. So there's just a lot of little branches floating around in here, and something like that. Pointed. Okay, so if you make these right, so they don't look like they're stuck on, they'll look like they're part of the tree. If you give a really, really hard edge here, they won't look right. You need to make them sort of blend in. I've got some here that I pulled out, and I'm going to put some new ones in there. You see how I squiggled my hand? I just sort of jiggle it back and forth as I put this in, and something like that. I think this area over here where these rocks are needs a little more value. Some more shadow in here in some areas. Give me some distinctness in these rocks so that it looks more like rocks. It looks sort of just like a gray. Very gray area. So I'm going to Put some more distinction in there. And I think that's about all I want to do here. Put in a few things like that. Put in a couple more things over here. See, these brush marks tell you the land is going like this. Okay. Only other thing I do once in a while, which I may do here right now, is throw a little splatter on this thing, if I can get my brush wet enough. It always loosens up the painting if you can get some splatter on it. All of a sudden it's got things that are in that water that you probably have trouble seeing some of that, but it really makes that painting sparkle. It's sort of the same idea as making these darks pop out. That's probably enough. There might be, I don't know, I'm going to get me a little orange here, put a few little things of debris. There's usually some stuff floating around in the water that's got like little leaves and stuff like that. There might be some stuff floating around in some areas. Don't have to do this, it's just sort of a final touch that sometimes I like to put on in the paintings, that you want to break this big area up, even though I got a lot of stuff broken up in there now, that there's a little shadow on this area here, maybe pull it out. So these are just all sort of calligraphy type things that enhance hope it enhances it a little bit. I think that's all I want to do. Find a place to put my name. I'll call this one done, and we'll, hour and a half, we've got time to maybe start another one if you guys want to stay with me. Do a quick print here. Okay, there we go. I'm going to stop with that. And this time I don't have to put the paper up for the next painting because I found a way to do it. With my easel here, I'm just going to pick this thing up. Give me go get a cup of coffee if you want, or take a bathroom break. I'm just going to flip this thing around, and voila. So I get this in the center pretty close. Let's see here. It's about where I had the other one, I think. All right. So I'm ready to go again. I just need some clean water, and I just happen to have another container of clean water here. So I think that's going to work. So what are we painting? This photograph of a place called Silver Falls, it's Silver Falls National Park, and it's in Silverton, Oregon. It's near Salem, about 20 miles from Salem, Oregon. And they've got hiking trails that go through here, and there's a dozen or more waterfalls. Some you can walk in behind and around or under, and some are tall like this. This is about 175 feet tall. It's actually a double falls. I don't know if you can see it, but there's the main falls here, and then there's another little fall back here that comes down into a pool of water, and it runs down here. So we're going to try to do this very fast and loose. I'm going to use a technique that I learned from my buddy Sterling Edwards, who I refer to all the time since I've taken several workshops from him. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to clean off my palette and get my clean water out of here and get ready to go. Let's see here. Yeah, my palette's a mess right now. Okay, let's get this thing cleaned out. So I hope you liked that last painting. And they're going to stay with me for this one. This one, I'm going to try to do this fairly quickly. I hope I'm going to do this in maybe I don't know, I want to say 30 minutes. Maybe I'll do it a little longer than that, but basically this should work fairly quickly if I can use the big brushes and some of the technique I've learned by watching Sterling Edwards and taking his workshops. I'd refer you to his workshops, but he's booked up through all of 2018 and I think even into 2019 right now. Okay, so we're ready to go. Hope you've had a chance to get a quick break. And I'm going to wet this down a little bit. I've got a good bit of pretty dark. I don't want these dark lines to show if I can keep from it. So we're just going to make this a big waterfall with some nice green trees at the top. So I'm just going to come down here and plop water on this whole thing. It's going to be wet and wet. And I'll see how I can do. I may mess it up, and if I do, I will learn something. So this is 300-pound Fabriano Artistico paper, which I usually always do my watercolors on, 11 by 14. So let's start with a little bit of this, maybe some violet back here. We're going to get a little bit of atmospheric perspective. Give me some paper towel. Let's just sort of put in something like that. While I'm doing it, I think I'm going to put that whole thing down here in the, since this is all wet, I'm going to just sort of come down this way and put tons of that in there. Since I want to stay away from my, as much as I can, stay away from my waterfall here in the center, I'm going to dry that out just a little bit to make sure I don't get too much paint in there. This is a light wash of violet, so I haven't painted the waterfall, but you can kind of see it right there. And that was just, what, 5 minutes? These brushes, as I've told you, are made of bristle. And the bristle brush gives some very nice blended edges and get some really soft edges with it. I'm going to pick up just a little blue and see if I can change the color over here just a little bit. Just picks up the paint in your brush and sometimes puts on too heavy a too heavy a mark. All right, so I've got a little bit of changing color. I've got some change going on up here. And that is what I want there. And since I'm trying to do this fairly quickly, I'm going to get my hairdryer out and dry that so that we can move on very fast here. So I'm going to turn my microphone off for a few seconds while I blow this dry. Okay, I'm back. All right, let's see how quickly we can finish this up. I want to get some sort of steel gray color. It's got some brown in it. I'm going to mix up my neutral tint here. Leave a little pile of that right there. Go over and get some of my browns. I think I'm going to get some of this burnt umber here. See how that goes. Come on, get me some more. So this is fairly dry now. I could let it dry a little more, but I think I'm going to stick with it that way. Over here we've got to put in some okay, that's some of the background waterfall. Not waterfall, but the cliffs back there. There's a little bit of a cliff back there. I'll leave that. And then this is going to be some trees and so forth back there. Let's pick up some green while I have this brush. And well, this is still somewhat damp. Okay. This top edge here I want to be a little softer, so I'm going to use my brush and just sort of scrub it out. You can take your brush and a little bit of water in it. You can just sort of scrub that out, make it lighter. This is going to be a rows of trees in there. I'm going to have a waterfall coming down here, and then it's going to come over here and come down. So down below here we're going to have a little more, maybe a little more blue, a little darker, maybe in some areas here. Again, this is all dry, but I want to come in and put in get some more brown in there. Picked up a little brown in my brush, and I got a little streak right in the middle of it, which I didn't particularly want. I didn't scrub it out enough, but it left some interesting textures in here in this cliff face that we're painting right now. And so I got the same color I want over here if I can do it. Now you see what I'm doing? I'm taking this brush and pulling it flat. And what that's doing is giving me this dry brush texture that says I'm skipping over the indentations in the paper. And I'm getting this look that looks a lot like is on this mountain, or this cliff rather. A similar type of thing over here. Gonna get a little more paint out here. I'm running out. Mix it up. Have some darker colors over here. Have this brown at the top. We're getting a lot of paper covered here very quickly. Okay, it's looking like an abstract almost. Okay, I want to come back and put a few more colors up here in this top area. This cliff back here. Change the color. I want to have some variation in this so that it's not all I need to have a little bit of this color on the this side of the waterfall up here. I didn't put it on. See the waterfall? I'm only using this small bristle brush so far. Go back and get some more blue, dark colors. I want to make sure I outline this waterfall as best I can. It looks pretty well outlined right now, but I'm going to put in just a little more dark in here. See if I can make it stand out for you even more. All right. So this is a whole different style than the last painting, for sure. Get a little blossom there. Get rid of that blossom. So I'm going to have some trees in here, and I'm going to pick up some of my sap green here. So we're going to come down in this area. And we're going to have a little bit of green outlining this rock down here. Add a little bit of yellow to it maybe, sort of lighten it up. And use my brush to sort of tickle this edge and pull it up. See, I made a nice gradiated look there. We're going to have some more greens on the other side. So I'm going to pick up a little bit different color, blue in my, put some blue in my sap green along with some neutral tint, and see if we can, I think there was a rock, I had a rock in here somewhere. Don't run on me there, folks. I'm using this brush for double duty. I should be putting this in with my flat brush and then using this brush to sort of soften the edges. So we've got some green growing here. A little bit of green going there. So I got different color greens. I am going to pick up my 1-inch flat, I think, and see if I can put in some more darks in here and get more definition. What we're going to do is now we're going to be painting around the rocks, or painting the rocks themselves, actually. Some other rocks down here that have something like that. Stick it out like this. Maybe make it come over here like this. I'm going to show you the other technique that I was talking about. With once you put that in, you leave that edge, but you take this bristle brush and you get it damp, and then take the water out of it, and you just come underneath here and you just pull it together like this. All of a sudden you get a nice gradated color on here. Come back and we'll get some other colors, maybe some browns in here. I have a little bit of the outline of this rock here. And same idea, just color in some okay. Pick up some of my violet, change the color a little bit, and let's come over here and see if we can put in a few colors under these rocks. I've got the start of a rock there. Let's put in some dark stuff here. Okay, just realized you might not be able to see all of that. I didn't reset my camera here before I started, did I, folks? There we go. All right. Okay, I'm making the rocks might be some water that runs over here. Didn't have it quite wet enough. See how that makes nice rocks on that cliff? Really interesting. Okay. about some more do that. So all I'm trying to do here, folks, is make this look like it's got a lot of rocks down here at the bottom, and we'll draw a few more things in around them, but basically that's the idea of making this thing have some fast and furious stuff going on. And I want to get the darks in there. This is where I was talking to Daisy again. I'm talking to all of you, but the more darks you put in, the more this thing pops. Looks like it might be way too dark, but it's going to lighten up, and it's going to just make these white areas or lighter areas explode with stuff. Okay, I think I'm going to put just another little layer. This top looks like it needs to be just a little darker in some areas, particularly here. Okay, how are we doing on time? We've been going about 20 minutes maybe? Okay. All right. Now this area up here is where the trees are, and where the I want to make some more trees. I'm going to make them like I showed you a while ago with the sort of negative painting, if you will. So I'm going to make trees out of this. You don't see the trees yet, but you're going to see them because I'm going to put in some darks around them and make them stand out. See that tree come to life? Probably could make that a little darker even. But I'll show you what I can do later by actually, you can make this darker again. You can make these areas between the trees that you have. We can put another layer of dark in there as well, and it will actually put another layer in there. Kind of looks like I got those things lined up too well. They need to be different. Okay, and then over here we'll probably put in some, come in and grab our brush and put in some positive trees. See, this is what you always do in acrylics and oils. You always put in, you pick up a brush and you make a positive tree, which is where you put in something like that, and you're painting over something. In this case, because it's the paint underneath is dry, it works a lot like oil painting or acrylic painting, but so, and that's almost too bold. It's really sticking out up there. When you look at this painting, it's too much. So one way to fix that is to sort of tone it down a little bit with your bristle brush. Look what happens when I do that. All of a sudden it's sort of blending into the background, and these vertical strokes from the brush are giving me some more trees in the background that look like I've got a whole woods sitting up there above my head. So I'll just put a few of those in. Again, use my bristle. And pop those. This area here looks almost too squared off. So let's come back and put in a few more trees. Up here, maybe. Something like that. Pick up a smaller little brush here and put in a few little things that look like this. Just have to be careful with the values. You don't want to get them to be too strong, especially in areas where you don't want people to look that much. I just want to make it look like there's a bunch of trees back here, going up the other part of this cliff back there. I'm not too concerned about the shape of these or whatever, because I'm going to use my bristle brush again. Come in and I'm going to shape them now with this bristle brush. What can you use if you don't have a bristle brush? Well, if you have an old oil painting brush, that's a bristle brush. Just make sure you cut it off so that it's very short. It's one suggestion I can give you. But it gives such nice texture and nice effects with this. Probably worth to go out and buy you a cheap bristle brush from a hobby store somewhere and just cut the bristles off so that it doesn't have, most bristle brushes have a long end on them. This is very, very condensed and there's tons of bristles in there and it's only like less than an inch long. The bristles are less than an inch long. So it makes it very, very stiff and very, very easy to get these kinds of edges and get this sort of feeling that you want back here where you got a lot of trees in the background and so forth. Okay, stop on that. I'm going to take my little round brush. I've been pulled this little number 4 round out. I've got some, this is going to work here. I've got to pull it down dry brush. So waterfall back here that I want to put in and has a little bit of water coming down. Okay, so just enough dark in there to make it look like it's bouncing over something. Same idea here. I'm using the side of the brush, pulling down very quickly. Myself a little bit of a fogginess up here. That's a little bit too strong. So you can put a little drop of paint in there and then use your bristle brush, if you have one, to make it look foggy. Somebody says on a tiny screen it look like crevices in the cliff. Well, we could have some crevices in the cliff, and that would not be unexpected. I might put a few down here actually when we get down here a little further. So I'll just pull this down and let it, put some of this in there like that, and do the same thing with the bristle brush. Make sure it's clean so you don't have extra paint in there, but just sort of pull it like that, and all of a sudden I've got this combination of light and dark coming down, and that's what I'm trying for. Let's see here, I want to, this dark edge needs to be just a little darker in some areas. pull it together just a little bit here. Make it a little darker. And I can use the same kind of technique here. Pull this down, and I'm making the dark. These things come down, they're usually coming over, falling over rocks and so forth. And so it's just, you just have to work with it a little bit to see if you can get the right kind of texture on the screen, or on the on here, and make sure that it's dark enough to see it, but not so light that it disappears. Yeah, Heather made a good comment there, Dick. You can get a cheap set of bristle brushes at Walmart. They're basically a hog bristle. You may have to cut them off a little bit so they don't have quite so much bristle on them, but it really it's a lot of fun to play with this. I really get excited sometimes just playing around with this, because you can take a color and put it in your brush and just do amazing things with it. But if you take a workshop with Sterling Edwards, he has a bigger brush. I have it. He has a brush that's this large. He works on 22 by 30 paper, and he makes it look so easy and whatever. But he's always using this technique of taking a brush and putting a color on, and taking his bristles and sort of shaping the kind of color, shaping the kind of effect he's trying to get. Down here in this area, we might put a few more crevices. I'm looking for things to do here now. Let's see. I got some other trees I want to put in, but maybe some other areas here that we can put in some more rocks, I guess. And same idea, blend it. And again, when you look at that, that's pretty bland. It's if you close and squint your eyes, you'll see that's almost all. This area is almost all mid-value, right? So how do you make that stand out more? Well, I'm going to take some neutral tint, put it in my big 1-inch brush, come right above it, and just go like this. And don't worry about the top edge, because I got my bristle. I'm going to come back and blend it in so that it all looks like it belongs together. See that dark spot? That's what makes things pop. Thank you, Henry. It's a little bit wet. I painted it and then I went back over it too soon. So it's going to kind of run together, but that's okay. I don't have to make this perfect. I'm trying to show you techniques and ideas for your paintings that by just using a couple different tools, i.e. a bristle brush, you can do a lot of interesting things. Okay, I think we're getting, it's fairly dry. I don't know if I've told you before, but when you test your paper to see if it's wet, try to use the back of your hand if you can think about it instead of the front. You have more oil on the front of your hand and you'll put oil on the paper. If you test it with that, test it with the back of your hand, and you can tell if it's cooler than your hand, it's still wet. If it's the same temperature, room temperature, or the temperature of your hand, it's pretty dry. That's the best way I can tell to figure it out. Okay, I'm going to see if we can finish this up here fairly quickly now. Don't have a lot left to do. I could sit around, mess around with this thing for a long time. I have so much fun with it, but we're going to put in some trees here. I'm going to take this brown and just sort of put in a long, tall tree here. Put him some, it's a little bit wet. I noticed that was a little damp when I went in there. On this side, it would probably be a lot better. So let's put one over there, and let's put a few, put some leaves on him, or put some, little things here, like that. Maybe come back and get some of our green again. We had this green going a while ago. Lost it. And just put in some, here's our tree branches. We do it with the flat brush, right? Put a few down here maybe. These can have big gaps in them. They don't have to be all filled out. Here we might have a few, I don't know. Something like that. Used to be a little wider at the bottom probably to make it support that tall thing. But what else? We could, I don't know if this is not wet enough. I couldn't show you, maybe I'll show you here how to, we got an area that's fairly dry, and I want to scrape out some trees. I want to get some trees out of there. So what's the best way to do that? Well, let's take our brush and just put a little clear water in it and just sort of dampen this area, like right in here. I'll put a couple of streaks, that's it. Just 2 widths of the brush, and it's going to start to dissolve that paint slightly. And while that's dissolving, I'm going to go work on something else over here. Let's see if I can put in some more rock formations maybe in here. Leave some areas above these. So I'm just putting in a few more things to sort of fill in that area. I don't like to have a big area with nothing going on. Over here, where I just left, maybe it's about right. Let's see if I can get this razor blade in there. See if I can scrape out some paint. You see it? It's taking the paint and it's pushing it across the paper and leaving a little dark edge to the right side. 2 little trees. And then you would typically go back and take some of your dark paint here, and I would come in, and I'm going to get rid of some of these brushes. I've got too much in my hand. Here we go. Come in and just put in something like that. Put a couple little things on him here like this. Just let this other one be cut off. He's already knocked down. Okay, I'm going to finish up here. I keep saying that. I'm going to get going, and I'm sure you guys are ready to go. I'll keep messing with this a little while here. See if I got some browns. Come in here and let's see if I can put in another layer of rock here. I'm using some of my browns. I just want to taper it off. So I got that color underneath. I got that white paper with the violet that was broken, and then I put this little bit of transparent color over it, and all of a sudden you can actually see. Maybe hard for you to see, but I can see through that, and I can tell that it's got some nice texture going on under there. And just going to let that go. I'm going to put a couple more over here to sort of echo that color on this side, and maybe another couple. I don't want to do too many of these things. I'll actually drive you nuts if I do too many. But let's put in a few things like this. There's probably make this water sort of, I don't know, run down like this. Maybe it's coming through this area here, a little crevice in there. And those brush strokes, again, I'm using this bristle brush, and just fast strokes like that, and all of a sudden I've got things that look like water running down. You could have water running anywhere on this thing, probably. Probably not over there, but I'll put a little bit of a color over there, see if I can change the color. And put a couple things here. Okay, maybe while I've got this brush, I'm going to go back and put just a little more calligraphy in here, a few more trees that maybe stick up. I want to make this one a little bigger. Got to do it better than that. Make it connect to the rock, and then like that. Okay, and then put a few little things on him like that, and that's all you need to do. It's still wet. Maybe put a few more things back here that look like they're some more tree trunks and so forth. These I may not do much with. I may just leave them that way. All right, what else? Thinking maybe that's plenty. A couple more. See another area where I can maybe put a big area here without too much going on. I'll pick up a little more of my greens and browns and put a something like this, put in a something like that. If I don't like the looks of it while it's still wet, I don't particularly like the looks of that, some of that, I'll just get my bristle brush out, pull them over here, and just sort of soften it up so it kind of goes into the background. This one tree here, I want it to be a little darker because it's really sort of in the foreground, so I'm going to put another little layer of trunk on him. Make him a little darker, make this guy a little darker, like that, and maybe even make this one a little darker over here. And something like that. Okay, I think I've shown you about all the tricks I can show you today. And all the little tricks I can think of. Thank you, Katie from Poland. Heather, have you ever tried Green Appetite by Daniel Smith? Natural green and brown. No, I haven't looked at it. It looks like moss on rocks. Well, that's interesting. Daniel Smith. No, I haven't tried any Daniel Smith colors at all. Like I am with brushes, I kind of get the same way with paints. I get these Miami blue paints, and I kind of like stick with them. And I put my name on here, folks, and I'm going to call this a day. Okay, I think we'll stop for now and zoom back and say thanks for joining me again today, folks. I really appreciate you being here. I like the interaction we have with a live class, and like for you to be able to tell me what you like and ask me questions. And so check out my Facebook page, check out my website. I'll have the paintings out there, and I'll have the videos out there, and I'll have the sketches and value maps. I didn't have a value map for this. Actually, I didn't even have a sketch for it. I'll see if I can create a sketch and put it out there for you. It's not too complicated, however. So tell your friends and have them join. And till I see you again, this is Larry Hamilton saying so long for now. Goodbye.